Did you know that the answer to all life's questions can be found in the good book? Listen, I have seen an angel, and his name is Mike Flanagan. Yes, this video is attempting to single-handedly bring back the Satanic Panic, thank you for asking. No, this thing looked bigger on Amazon.
It's time to analyze Midnight Mass and pull out some Dungeons and Dragons tips from the show. But first, I need you to do something. Something very important. I need you to drink some of my blood.
Wait, hang on. Have you just been, humidifying my room with blood this whole time?
Shut up and drink.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and do the wise thing and place this right here so that I do not repeatedly take shots of communion wine. Midnight Mass is an incredible show, and you absolutely should watch it. This video is going to be relatively spoiler light, so you can feel free to watch this and watch the show. This video will ruin nothing for you. We will be discussing many of the core themes, mostly around religion, and we'll also be discussing the monster a little bit. However, I believe that the monster is relatively obvious what it is by episode 1, even if the actual show takes quite a few more episodes to show the thing to us. I don't believe I'm spoiling anything if I let you know what it is. I'll also let you know that this video is actually part 2 of my Halloween double feature. So if you would like to learn some D&D tips from Netflix's brand new cherry flavor, then I highly recommend you queue that one up in your YouTube player in addition to this one. Both videos, however, are designed to be able to stand alone, so if you're not interested in brand new cherry flavor and you only want to learn some D&D tips from Midnight Mass, this video can be its own thing. You don't need to play the double feature game. Also, another little forewarning, this video is going to be talking about some of the ways that Midnight Mass critiques and comments on religion. However, this video is completely neutral on the topic of religion. I'm not making any points here, we're just analyzing some of the ways that Midnight Mass analyzes religion and attempting to implement those into a fantasy environment. This video is a Dungeons and Dragons video. This is not a skeptic, atheist, or pro-religion or anything. We're just talking about a TV show. Now, without further ado, and with Mike Flanagan as my shepherd, let's learn some D&D tips from Midnight Mass. The tiny town of Crockett Island is an ideal place for a horror setting, although at first glance, it's actually far less suited to be a self-contained D&D campaign. After all, it's a single location, and are you really going to be able to stretch that out between levels 1 to 20? However, a small town, or even any other single location campaign, actually has a lot more depth that you can get into than you might normally think. Every town has secrets. And as we've seen in Midnight Mass, as we learn these secrets, especially about the characters, the whole world seems to unfold and be further contextualized, and nothing feels the same. And if you are hoping to run an entire D&D campaign in a single location, not every secret needs to be interpersonal. Dungeons beneath the town, secret passageways in the walls, caves no one knew about, all sorts of things that will allow the adventure to grow deeper, if not wider. If you are a particularly rigorous planner, you can set up your town to be this particularly complex and beautiful and intricate network of overlapping things and interlocking pieces that will open up to your players over time. This style of encounter design is particularly prevalent in video games, and it's very satisfying to actually pull off. And the reason you want to do this is that the farther drilled down your campaign is, the easier it is for your players to get to know all these characters and to make this town feel like their home. However, I would advise that you don't take this too far. You probably should not design a full level 1 to 20 game in a single small location or small town. And the reason for that is not due to the fact that I think it would be boring. I actually think it would be very fun. However, quite frankly, if you're trying to design something this intricate and complicated, if you're trying to design something that is that incredibly long in this, you are going to be planning for so long that unless you are a professional, full-time adventure writer, you are never going to finish planning this thing, and you will never get to run your actual game. So plan for something more like level 1 to 8 or 1 to 10 or something like that, or another limited level range. I highly recommend this style of adventure design, even if you're not doing anything related to horror. Creating a small, limited, drilled down, and highly puzzleified location that your campaign will be taking place is a lovely little thing for your players to experience. And also...
Oh yeah, it's all coming together. Wait, no, stop.
Religion in small towns is usually so much more than just showing up once a week and calling it done. Which makes it kind of strange, actually, that that's exactly how we generally run temples and religions and stuff in fantasy worlds. As seen in Midnight Mass, a church can be a supply hub, a community center, a place for therapy, all sorts of things. I don't know how it is where you live, but where I live, I don't think I've ever actually been to a voting station that wasn't inside of a church. Churches actually do quite a lot, and they're usually pretty heavily intertwined with the communities they're integrated into. If you have a church in your town, you almost certainly have interacted with it in some way. So when your D&D players enter a town with a temple to Pelor in it, they should notice very quickly. On their way into town, they should see these priests, being that Pelor is the god of farmers. They should see priests going out and bringing water to the farmers. And if there isn't an inn in town, they should, generally speaking, be invited to stay at the church instead. Especially considering in medieval times, the church was usually the center of education and learning. So if the characters need to access any form of administrative processes, they're probably not going to the lord or mayor of the town, they're probably going to the church. I will remind you at this point that this video is not making any judgment calls whatsoever about religion. However, the fact of the matter is that churches and temples and all sorts of religious institutions generally spread out once they're in a town, and your world building should reflect that. Speaking of world building, we actually kind of underestimate the zealotry that would be the case in a fantasy world. As we see in Midnight Mass, the citizens of Crockett Island are, pretty average religious people, pretty moderate kind of people. But the second miracles start happening, everything changes. Well, the fact of the matter is that in Dungeons and Dragons and other places that have literal provable gods who interfere in the realm of normal man and have clerics that are constantly performing miracles, well, you're gonna have a very high amount of access to these kinds of things, and people are going to be far more involved in the church and in religion than even in our world. So generally speaking, I honestly don't think that monarchies are the most likely form of government that you're gonna see in a fantasy world. If there are miracles happening on the daily, coming out of temples will be the #1 authority in most fantasy worlds. You're going to see a lot more theocracies than you're going to see monarchies. I'd also like to talk about the tendency of religions to see everything through the lens of their religion. Once again, I don't mean this to sound as a critique of religion. I'm simply talking about the way the show does it and how it tells us something about how temples and stuff in our game should work. Many religious authorities believe that the entire world can be understood through the words written in their religious texts. There's an old Jewish saying about the Torah. They say, "Turn it and turn it. Everything is in it." Thus meaning that every single thing in the world, new or already known, can be understood through the constant reinterpretation of the Holy Book. We see this in Midnight Mass with the monster, which is, I think, fairly obvious what it is. Now, we normally would understand this creature based off of its sort of pop culture, we know what this is, we've seen it in movies. But in Midnight Mass, they don't interpret it through media, they interpret it through the Bible. They see what it is, and they see what it does, and they understand it as an angel that's doing communion. This as a concept is something that has so much you can do with it. D&D and other fantasy settings are filled to the brim with interplanar creatures and monstrosities, and there's so much fun to be had if you have the different religions and temples in your world misinterpreting what they are based off of their own beliefs and teachings. For example, we had mentioned a Church of Pelor earlier. Pelor is the sun god, and you could have a rogue fire elemental running across the countryside burning people to death, and the Church of Paylord could interpret this as people ascending to the sun.
William, what happens when you subscribe?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? What happens when you subscribe? Speaking for myself, when I subscribe to William SRD, there's this moment when all of my neurons and my synapses all fire off in this singularity of understanding, this new knowledge that my time on YouTube, it's never gonna be the same. And I know that every single week, every Friday, I'm gonna get a new video, and I'm always gonna click on it. And it's gonna tell me so many things. It's gonna teach me about genre tropes and the way that genre interacts with role-playing. And I learn about historical RPGs and the way that medieval and Renaissance people actually played very similar games to what we play now.
And then what?
And then I hit the like button. Okay, this was hell to film 2 videos in 1 week, so no video next week. I got something bigger coming the week after. See you then, everybody.